Okay, and welcome back. And it is the first Wednesday of the month. That means Webster Griffin Tarpley kicks things off tonight. Webster, of course, as I've said for years, is probably our greatest living historian in terms of people who are accessible through the electronic media. He is a remarkable repository of perspective and wisdom. And I think you'll remember that as we look back many years ago now, Webster and I were probably the first two to take an active anti-Obama stance on the radio. I mean, we went after him, and no one else did at the beginning. Of course, everybody is now. The guy is just an obvious fraud and a loser. But beyond that, Webster has much to say about many things. I know we don't always agree on everything, but he is always an asset to this program and to our knowledge base. And let's welcome him back. How was your holiday? Good?
Oh, fine, thank you.
Good.
I'm very happy. The one good thing has happened to me. Let me mention it right off the bat. If you look at C-SPAN, if you look at the C-SPAN website, that lecture that I did about the Russian fleets of 1863, that is still very popular. I think that is it is one of the most popular Civil War historical pieces. It may be the most popular Civil War piece. And I'm actually competing, if you look at, for example, all C-SPAN material on their website in the past 7 days. I think when I came in, I was number 8 in the past 7 days, and I think I'm about number 12 or 13.
Congratulations! Well done.
In the last 30 days, and this is competing, with press conferences by Obama, Hillary, Elizabeth Warren, Sibelius, Ted Cruz. You name it, right? That's nice. That's mixing it up with everything.
Real nice for you. You deserve it.
Thank you. So, people, if you have a minute, if you haven't seen this, do go to C-SPAN website. You go to the C-SPAN video library and just type in Tarpley, and you'll get a choice. I think I've been on C-SPAN three times principally, but the most recent is the one about the Russian fleets. And the goal of this is that has a purpose, right? To get it rebroadcast, because the historical establishment, since our last program here, I have gone to Gettysburg for the 150th anniversary of the Gettysburg Address, right? That was November 22nd in the cemetery there at Gettysburg. And there was also a special commemoration for one of the two black soldiers, one of the U.S. colored troops who fought the Confederacy, is also buried there. So there were a number of things going on. But principally there were speeches by the Secretary of the Interior. I think her name is Sarah Jewell. But McPherson, right? James McPherson, retired from Princeton. He gave the main speech. And this, by all odds, this was not as bad as the one that had been given back in July for the 150th anniversary of the battle by Doris Kearns Goodwin, who mainly talked about herself. McPherson is a more competent guy, but unfortunately, there is not a murmur about the question of foreign policy, right? And remember, when you're dealing with the Russian fleets, you're dealing with one of the factors, right? The arrival of the Russian fleet in New York on September 24th may be, a big or the big factor in getting Lincoln and Seward to declare Thanksgiving on October 3rd, a week later, right? Because there was nothing else really for them to give thanks for, right? Things have been going badly, right? Gettysburg, okay, a victory. Vicksburg, a tremendous victory. But then the New York City draft riots, and then the Battle of Chickamauga, which was a Union disaster. That was about a week before the fleets arrived, or even less. So if you ask, what was it at the end of September, beginning of October that would make Lincoln thankful? Well, the one big thing is the arrival of the Russian fleets, because this meant, in effect, that the British and the French would have a very, very hard time ever intervening, and probably that was going to be ruled out unless they went completely bonkers, which was always possible. So there's this strong Russian element in Thanksgiving that people are not aware of.
No, they aren't. It's a very interesting development. It was a very big thing on the international stage back then. People don't know it now, of course. I think another thing that's interesting, you may not know this, but our program, this one, is on Europe Hotbird satellite distribution now. We're into 120 million homes in Europe, all over Europe. They're primarily satellite dish receiving, and so the potential is there, and we're getting email all the time now for months about our European listeners. And I think their perspective of history, frankly, is far more gifted and wise than most Americans. So this what you're mentioning, I think, is very important from a worldwide perspective than just our own. So good news.
Yes, thank you. So anyway, I hope people will take a look, because again, I'd like to get it rebroadcast again and make it harder for these fakers to continue their racket. Now, today I have a number of themes, right? Different ones. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could talk a bit about Syria, first of all, right? And there's an occasion for this, right? We have this very famous lady. She's a Catholic nun, a Melkite Catholic. She's actually born in Lebanon, but lives in Syria. Her monastery and convent is located in the area controlled by the Free Syrian Army, not the Assad government. So she's not to be considered an agent of the Assad government in any way.
A quick aside, Webster, important. Ran a story today that important factions within the so-called FSA or rebel movement.
Yes, this is what I'm going to get to. That's exactly it.
Got it. Go.
Yes,
go.
Sure. Go. The London Independent.
Yep.
And there's more to be said about that. I talked about this on Press TV in the afternoon. People can see it at tarpley.net. If you're in Europe, take a look at tarpley.net. Right? By the way, if you're in Europe, I have German, French, Italian, Spanish, Polish, Russian pages. Please take a look.
Wow. All right.
Sure. You can look at my website. On the left-hand side, it says International. You click on that, and then there's a page with all the different languages. And it's not as up-to-date as it could be, but it is, I think, a valuable resource.
Very good.
So, we have Agnes Mariam, right? Mother Superior Agnes Mary of the Cross, and she comes from Kara in Syria, halfway between Damascus and Homs. And she's just now in the final stages of a very successful North American tour. She's been in Arizona. She's been in Northern California, Los Angeles. She's been in Cleveland, Ohio. She's been in Denver, in Nebraska. She went on then to Canada. She actually flew over to Britain. She was interviewed by the BBC. She then came back to Canada for more events there. She's got an event in Brooklyn. You can see her calendar. If you want to attend some of these events, you go to Syria Solidarity Movement on the Internet and look hard. There is a calendar there that tells you exactly where she's going to be. But the one I would invite people to is next Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. She's going to be at the National Press Club, at the McClendon Group, right, founded by the famous Sarah McClendon, who was for decades the doyen, the dean of the White House Press Corps. This is long before Helen Thomas, right? Helen Thomas, fine person, right. But for many, many decades it was Sarah McClendon. So this is the McClendon group, and that's going to be Mother Agnes Mariam next Tuesday evening. It starts between 6 and 7, and I think that'll be very interesting. And it's especially interesting, as you say, because we now have these reports, which are not exactly confirmed, but they're fairly substantial, that the Syrian rebellion is breaking up, that they're actually splitting, not just that they fight among themselves, but that the faction led by General Idris, who had been profiled as the CIA's golden boy, is now seeking a united front with Assad and the government against the crazies, right, against the Nusra and Islamic Emirate
well, we call them, we call them Al-Qaeda too, but you're right.
Takfiris, right? This is a good word, takfiris, the holier-than-thous.
They are absolute killers. They're crazy, and this is a very interesting situation. Brad, we're going to skip this break. Go ahead, Webster. There's a lot of important stuff.
Thank you. So this is what's coming from an article in The Independent. At least that's how I know it. A London newspaper,
story
right?
I ran. Yeah,
sort of center voice of British intelligence, right? Guardian left, London Times maybe to the right, maybe Independent in the middle. I don't know exactly, but something like that. And here's the idea that General Idris has apparently dropped his demand that Assad quit as president before the Free Syrian Army, of which Idris is supposedly the commander. He's really not, but he's sort of on paper the commander. Idris says, we will no longer demand that Assad resign and go home and leave the country as the price, as the prerequisite for starting talks. He says, we want Assad out, but that can come at the end of the negotiating process. Well, the negotiation process can go on for years, right? And eventually it doesn't mean anything anymore. And the idea is that they're really afraid of the Nusra brigades and the Islamic Emirate of Sham and Iraq, right? Sham, Syria, the Levant, right? And they also point out in the article that the most ferocious terrorists of the whole bunch are the ones from Chechnya, right? The ones that NATO has trained against Russia. And they're telling you in this article that when these Chechen terrorists come around, looks like they wear suicide belts 24/7. And if you get into an altercation with one of them for any reason, he's going to threaten to blow you and him up. So it's very hard to get along with Chechenian terrorists.
Kind of minimizes discussion. That's right. Wild.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But this is a really big break, and the idea is that is now the content of the Syria Geneva conference, right? The Geneva conference is thought to be coming sometime in later January, the second half of January, and there had been some question, what will that be? Because if you looked at it on paper, it didn't look very, very promising. But now, if you have the entire, or large parts at least, of the secular armed opposition saying we're going to make common cause with Assad, it means that the secular armed opposition of the Free Syrian Army is in effect following the democratic opposition, which has long since gone back to Assad, right? The people who started with pro-democracy demonstrations in early 2011, they've long since gone back to Assad. And, of course, what happened, and this is one of the things that Agnes Mariam was first in the world, I think, to point out, was that she said when you had the first pro-democracy demonstration in Homs, you had the government forces and you had peaceful civilian pro-democracy demonstrators, yes, but immediately an armed gang intervened, got in the middle, and started shooting in both directions. And that's the source of the civil war. In other words, a Saudi-sponsored terrorist gang largely made up of foreign fighters. And that's exactly what I saw when I was there 2 years ago now. So it's the other thing, of course, about Syria, right? We have to remember this is my last appearance of the year, right? So this is December. Another year has gone by. This year started off with the idea that the rebels were gaining ground. And then, of course, we had the fall of Qusair, the liberation of Qusair in the beginning of June. And ever since then, that was a huge defeat. That was maybe Stalingrad for the rebels.
Good analogy.
And ever since then, they've been in retreat. And the idea now is that Aleppo may soon be liberated. In other words, the death squads and killers may be driven out of Aleppo with the help of the civilian population, who are absolutely fed up with this entire thing. So this is precisely a good time for Agnes Mariam to be on the scene here in Washington. Of course, she'll be meeting as many people as are willing to listen to reason. But then for the public, it's at the National Press Club on 14th Street on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. So it may be that, for the end of the year, this rebellion is going to, at least maybe not collapse, but certainly ratchet down to a much lower level. And this of course, is it's tremendously important compared to what we could have been in. Now, it's true. I started attacking Obama as soon as he came up over the horizon at the beginning of 2008. But Obama has long since ceased to be the greater evil. Obama has been relegated to the status of lesser evil now for, a year, 2 years?
No.
Certainly since the middle of 2011. In other words, since you have these lunatic, reactionary, and indeed fascist Tea Party characters running around, right, trying to destroy the government, it puts Obama in a completely different light. And if you look at the Republican reaction to what Obama now has, right, the Iran deal, flawed as that may be, you can see that the Republicans are the party of war. Don't be fooled. And don't be fooled by that libertarian claptrap. The Republicans are the war party. They've never stopped being the war party. The entire foreign policy apparatus is in the hands of neocons or other people that are so unprincipled that it just doesn't make...
They're going to take over the Congress at the midterms?
No. I think the Republican Party is now coming close to collapse, which is what I hope for them. It is what they deserve. Let me just the one last thing about this war question. If you had Romney as president, you would have had a guaranteed war with Syria, probably by July or August, September at the latest.
Well, that was the agenda.
And you would probably have a war with Iran going on right now with Romney. And people should be absolutely clear about that. And whatever little Rand Paul says is not going to make any difference, right? Because the foreign policy apparatus is that. And by the way, Rand Paul, through the Ron and Rand supporting Romney the way they did, they showed that they had no principled objection to war. They were willing to support a warmonger candidate who was talking about Russia as the main historical antagonist or enemy.
Oh, it's lunacy.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So
we'll call Rand Curly from now on.
Curly?
Yeah. I think he's curly hair.
Yeah, we better do it before he starts losing it, huh?
That's always that.
Look like they may not be long for this world.
Yeah.
All right, but look, concerning the Republican Party now, I think I've said this before. I hope I have. My perspective is this. You want to get out of this terrible situation. Right now you have two dysfunctional parties. You have a government which is not functioning well. The way out of this is the destruction of the Republican Party in place. It doesn't mean that it totally ceases to exist, but that at least as a national party, it needs to be pushed into permanent minority status. Never again must there be a Republican president, because it's a guaranteed war, and almost, certainly a world war, right, given the mentality of these people, right? Those neocons have been out of power now for 5 years, and they're angry, and they want revenge, and, Netanyahu is not getting what he wants, Jeff.
He's throwing fits.
The neocons would be giving it to him, right? Yeah. And Romney would be doing... Yeah. Romney was Netanyahu's best friend.
He's been screaming. He said, "I won't shut up." One of the quotes in the last week about it.
Well, look, remember, if you watch the discussions of the Kennedy assassination, the other recent anniversary at the 22nd of November, I think the way you have to think about all this is the Kennedy assassination is the beginning of the end of the New Deal party system, the New Deal political paradigm, right? That would have been from 1932 to 1968, Democratic Party domination, New Deal policies generally, anti-Wall Street Democrats in command with Roosevelt, in command with Kennedy. Unfortunately, also pro-Wall Street Democrats in command with Truman and then ultimately with Carter, but that's a little bit after this.
Well, I'm not sure about LBJ, frankly. I don't like
LBJ is a mixed case. He is a tragic figure because in terms of domestic policy, this is some of the best we've ever had. But then
my God, Vietnam? Come on.
Yeah, but I said domestic. The tragic flaw comes in then on Vietnam. You go to a poor black neighborhood and ask them what president has done the most for you in the past 50 years,
Well,
it's LBJ.
I know.
So, and it's true in terms of civil rights, but then also think about all the lives saved by Medicare. Think about the war on poverty, which had a tremendous effect as long as it was going on. But then all of this destroyed.
He was schizophrenic.
By the folly. Yeah, exactly. He's half monster and half genius, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is completely unfortunate. But and of course, historically, in terms of the scheme I'm trying to develop, the collapse of the Democratic Party in 1968 is a direct result of the fact that he bought into this Vietnam lunacy, and that destroyed the Democratic Party. I know. I was in Chicago, right at the corner of Michigan and Balbo, in August of 1968, setting up the cry of "Dump the Hump." Right? That was Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah.
So this is when the Democratic Party collapsed. So it means from 1968 to 2008, right? A big piece of anybody's lifetime. We've gone through a reactionary nightmare, the Southern strategy. It's not the New Deal anymore. It's the Southern strategy, and we've got the labor movement in retreat, wages falling, barbarism in culture.
50 million in poverty now.
Dismantling, yeah, precisely. And so at the end of that, right, which is historically where we are now, but I think now it is certainly true that the party system is changing, and we're going to have a new party system. And
okay.
It's not going to be the Southern strategy.
All right. When we come back, we'll find out if the Webster agrees or disagrees, or what he has to say about the Republicans trying desperately to gain some kind of purchase by holding on to the outrageous, disgusting Obamacare fiasco to date. Where it goes, I don't know. But to date, it hasn't helped anyone. Be right back in a minute. Okay, back with you folks and Webster, Griffin, Tarpley. Okay, Webster, what about the Obamacare debacle? That website is going to be running close to $1 billion before it's done, if it's ever done. They're still saying it's got grave holes in it.
What do we learn from this, right?
Yeah.
First of all,
we learned that Michelle gave the damned award to build it to the only bidder allowed to bid on it, which happened to be a buddy of hers.
That's right. Cronyism. Exactly right. That's all fine. One of the things is don't use contractors, right? Don't use CGI Federal. We should have a permanent federal bureaucracy of people who are going to have their entire career inside the federal bureaucracy. No revolving door. No keeping one eye on your work for the government and another eye on how you're going to get yourself into a private company once you quit, right? Which is what they do. So no more revolving door. And don't use foreign contractors, right? CGI from Canada. What kind of stuff is this? On the other hand, after all of this battle, right? This is what came out. In other words, this is what we have. Now, the starting point is, if you don't do anything, you're killing 26,000 Americans per year. You can think about that. It's what's it going to be? It's 500 per week, right? You can break that down, right? It gets to be quite a few. In other words, the morbidity and mortality that comes from not having health insurance is accurately estimated as killing 26,000 people in this country, right? And that may be low. So you really have to do something about that. In other words, you've got to develop a labor force. You've got to invest in the health and the training and the qualification and the education and experience level of a labor force. How are you going to compete with China? How are you going to compete with India? Right? They have oceans of cheap labor. You can't go the cheap labor route. That just does not work. It's got to be high value added, high capital intensity, high energy intensity, and again, capital goods, science, right? The most modern stuff that you can get. So if you're going to train people to an MA or PhD level, you can't have them dying young. They have to live long, healthy, happy lives so you get the maximum out of these huge educational investments that you're going to have to make. So I would say the impulse to do something about this is absolutely essential. The problem is, well, there were three possibilities. The Republicans do nothing, meaning kill 26,000 Americans per year. I'm sorry, that will not fly. Obama, of course, is this thing saying, yes, well, we'll partially address the 26,000 dead. We'll do different things. We'll try to chisel here and there. We'll try to give money to the insurance companies, and we'll bail them out, and so forth. On the other hand, now that is what has come out of the system. Now, the third possibility, the one that I've always wanted, is the Medicare for All. And it's simple. You don't have to go through this website, or better yet, you've got it already. The Social Security Administration knows who everybody is, because everybody has a number. All you have to do is have the Social Security Administration transfer their record of everybody to the Medicare authorities, right, the Centers for Medicare Services, I think it's called, and then everybody is enrolled. Mm-hmm. You could charge $100 per person per month for people that can afford it, and for others, if you're destitute or unemployed, then it's free. And who pays? Wall Street pays. Wall Street pays through a 1% Wall Street sales tax on all of their turnover.
Any talk about the Tarpley tax at all? I mean, does anybody even mention it anymore?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Is it okay? Chatter is one thing, but I'm serious talk in the Congress about this.
Well, let's take a look at this. Let me just a couple of things before we get to that. In other words, what are the actual possibilities? Remember, my perspective is the Republican Party has to be destroyed. This is totally dysfunctional. You look at somebody like Cruz, right? Rand Paul. These are enemies of human civilization, right? If they take power, everything that has been built up over several thousand years is going to be destroyed because of this neo-feudal lunatic aspect, right? I was interested to see Rand Paul believes in fighting duels, so he's back.
What?
He said he wished that dueling were still legal in Kentucky. Then he could challenge some reporter who was.
He was serious?
Yeah, sure. It's not the first time. I mean, other reactionaries have done this. All right, but. The Republican Party can function, I suppose, as a political party for racists and reactionaries in the Deep South, in the Intermountain West, in various rural, backward areas of lesser cultural development and what have you. But then that leaves us with the Democratic Party, and as I've just said, the Democratic Party is useless, right? It's absolutely dysfunctional for some of the reasons that you've said. So what should happen there? Here, I think it's a little bit more differentiated. You can see Wall Street Democrats, people like Obama, like Schumer, like Durbin, right? There's the majority in the Senate, to be sure, and a very large group in the House. Those are Wall Street Democrats, right? They're paid for. Pelosi, Wall Street Democrat. But then there's also something else, right? There is Elizabeth Warren, who does talk about attacking the banks, right? You do have this guy de Blasio. And he's a demagogue, of course, in New York, right? And he got a lot of money from Soros, but he will have to do some things. And then you've got, others. You've got Marcy Kaptur. You got more people in the House, I think, are authentic. DeFazio, Kaptur, and people like this. So I would say you can distinguish a Wall Street or plutocratic Democratic Party, so to speak, and then a labor or populist Democratic Party. So what you want to do, destroy the Republican Party. At that point, the Democrats tend to split into these two parts. And one example of how that worked is when a Wall Street man, Obama, wanted to nominate Larry Summers for the Federal Reserve, there was a rebellion, and the senators said, no, we refuse to vote for that SOB. Mm-hmm. So now we have Yellen. Yellen is just about as bad, but Yellen operates under significantly more left cover. So what you had in those last elections, right, the beginning, a month ago almost, that's a left turn for the United States. That's the beginning of a very significant left turn. And, of course, we had the interesting fact that Terry McAuliffe defeated Cuccinelli in Virginia, of all places, and that's a statewide sweep. So McAuliffe defeated Cuccinelli.
Yeah, got it. All right, stand by.
I'm sorry, Cuccinelli, as he's called here.
Okay. Hold on a minute. We got to take a break. Back in just a couple as we continue with Webster on this Wednesday night. Okay, back with Webster. All right, Mr. T, let's see what you have to say about Obamacare.
Well, again, Obamacare is not the worst. Obamacare has rationing. But you know what the Republicans have? They have rationing too. The Republicans do it through the market. And if you don't have the money, where do you go to protest? The Democrats do it through a board. I'll take the board. I can go and chain myself to the fence in front of the board. I can organize, a demonstration against the board. I have an adversary, right? I know what I'm dealing with. I have names. I have people. I can go to their houses, right? I can act on them in all sorts of ways. The Republicans say, oh, well, the market, right? You don't qualify. Sorry. So the Republicans are complete hypocrites. They are more genocidal because the Obamacare is less genocidal than the status quo that the Republicans would like to return to. And I think just about everybody knows people who are literally dying. They can't get care because they have pre-existing conditions. They don't have the money. They're not 65. And they would like to live until January 1st or 2nd so that they can begin going to these things. I point you to a very interesting article here in the Washington Post. They went to Kentucky. They went to Appalachia, right? They went to Jackson, Kentucky, in Breathitt County. It's known as Coronary Valley because of diabetes, hypertension, and other problems. Per capita income, $15,000. So these poor people, most of them have never had health insurance. And now there's a Medicaid expansion in Kentucky. The governor is a Democrat. He's going along with it. And literally, you have some of these poor people in Appalachia who have never had the ability to go to a doctor in their lives. And you can read some of these stories, right? And they're actually quite quite moving.
There's your third world, and then some.
Yeah, that's the third world. That's Appalachia, right? No, that's a place that obviously needs more than that. But that it's the difference between a deadly status quo and nothing. Now, here's the idea, though. Right now, there's a tremendous worldwide motion in favor of raising wages. I think we're due for some kind of a worldwide mass strike. If you go back to the past Depression, 7 years into the Depression, 1936, you had huge mass upsurges, revolutionary mass strike in Spain, in France, and above all in the United States. The United Auto Workers, the United Steel Workers, and so forth. I put this perspective out at the New York City Left Forum back in June. Please go to tarpley.net and take a look at it. More recently, we've had a think tank in London saying that they think there's going to be an upsurge in 2014 into 2015. And the head of the left party in France, a guy called Mélenchon, said this past Sunday, France is in 1788. Now, what they mean by that is 1 year before the big revolution, 1 year before 1789. So the guy's telling us France is on the verge of a revolution. If you look at what's been happening this year, we've seen mass strike upsurges in various forms in Egypt, Turkey, Brazil. There's one going on in Ukraine right now, which has been hijacked, of course, because it's been directed by NATO agents.
Right.
But the energy that you see in these things doesn't really come from the demands they make. It doesn't come from some park or some other thing. It comes from the fact that there's a world economic depression. Now, people are fighting back. Interestingly, just in the past week, you've had some very well-paid German workers who have a very low-wage sector in their own country. Germany is now going to have a minimum wage for the first time in their history. And it's really interesting, right? Because they have some of the best paid workers in the world, and they have some of the worst paid. So now there's going to be a floor under the worst paid. Similarly, at the other end of the scale, Bangladesh, where the average pay in a textile, a T-shirt factory, is going from $35 to $70, and in the middle, I guess or maybe the upper middle,
$35 to $70
per month. Per month. That's a month. And the idea is that Bangladesh has been the end of the line, and after that, there's nothing, right?
That's bottom of the barrel.
There's nobody poorer. So if the bottom of the barrel is coming up, that I think that's helpful for the entire world. But now, given the fascisto Republicans blocking the Congress, right? These despicable characters. They obviously hate the minimum wage. They represent, Wall Street, big business. Actually, they represent low-wage sweatshop economy, right? Low-wage service employers. A lot of localities are taking things into their own hands. The most dramatic, you probably followed this, at SeaTac Airport, there was just a referendum to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Uh-huh.
Here in Montgomery County and in Prince George's County, I am proud to say, we will have a minimum wage of $11.50 in about, 4 yeyears from now, 2017. And it goes up in steps.
Yeah, well, won't inflation eat that up?
Well, it's in some cases it is indexed.
It's a lot of padding. Well, if it isn't indexed, it's pie in the sky.
There's a cost of living escalator in New Jersey, right?
Uh-huh.
The same day that the Garden State Goering was reelected in his special election, right?
Yeah.
Right? Remember, this was an election. He had two elections. He had one election for Democrats with Cory Booker, and the Democrats went to that one. And then he had the one on election night, which was for Republicans, and that's why he did relatively well.
Mm-hmm.
But if Cory Booker had been on the ballot the same night, the whole black community would have come out. Christie might have won, but it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good for him. But now, at the same time that the voters were saying, okay, we'll take Christie for 4 more years, they also overrode his veto of an increase in the minimum wage in New Jersey, which is now going to go to $8.25 in January, right? And similarly, San Francisco, Santa Fe.
That's a big bitch slap, as they say.
But this is a big movement, and it's all based now, since the Congress won't act, it's going to be done through states. Now, the other question is, what's the downside? This Thanksgiving was the first Thanksgiving in quite a few years with the lower rates on food stamps. The Obama stimulus had included increases in the food stamp rate. This is we had people at food banks saying that in this November, the month that's just ended now, they ran out of food earlier in the month. In other words, the whole last week of the month, they had no food, so they were very happy to get these charity meals of Thanksgiving. And now here's an even bigger one: unemployment insurance. Okay, this is now emergency. As this depression requires, right? This is the House Ways and Means Committee run by a lunatic ideologue called Dave Camp, Republican of Michigan. Unless the House acts, the Federal Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program will end on December 28th. Merry Christmas from the Republicans. 1.3 million Americans would immediately lose their unemployment insurance. So multiply that by 3 or 4 to get the idea of how many people. So you're talking easily 5 million. So I think, in other words, the arrogance, the insufferable arrogance and greed of these Republican legions of greed and the Wall Street people and the Democratic side, they've learned nothing. And maybe the Detroit example, right? We're now told Detroit is bankrupt, and they're going to give the axe to the pensioners so they can pay the derivatives to the Wall Street predators.
They're going to cut them off completely?
Huh?
They're going to cut them off completely?
Well, it's not clear how much, right? They're going to be cut. How much they're going to be cut, that's precisely the political question.
Meanwhile, court said that Detroit certainly could declare bankruptcy. It's allowed.
No, this is obviously crazy, because the Michigan Constitution says under no circumstances can bankruptcy or anything else be used to cut.
Well, it's another example of the court lunacy in this country.
Yeah, precisely. But so here's what I think, though. There is this question, right? How long will the American people lie down, play dead, lick the boots that kick them, allow Republicans and reactionary Republicans and Wall Street Democrats, how long will they be allowed to run wild? And I say maybe not long. Maybe something is coming. Now, here's the question, though. A mass strike wave is a great thing, but by itself, it solves absolutely nothing. Because suppose you have those crackpots from Occupy Wall Street, or somebody like Russell Brand. Ever hear of him?
Oh, yeah.
Russell Brand. Russell Brand is now proposing himself in the pages of the London Guardian and the BBC as the leader of the world revolution. Now, this guy knows as much about revolution as...
he didn't waste time appointing himself, did he?
Yeah, he's a degenerate, right? This is exactly what you don't need. This character has no idea of revolution. What he means by revolution is the consciousness revolution of 1968 with LSD, and really he hasn't made any...
Yeah, he's a lightweight phony. I don't understand.
But what it means is that the ruling class, the global ruling class, where the British obviously play a very special role, the global ruling class is aware that a mass upsurge is coming, and they are preparing the counterinsurgency. They want you to be interested in Assange. They want you to be interested in Snowden. They want you to be interested in Russell Brand. If possible, they want you to be interested in Noam Chomsky. Even though, of course, Noam Chomsky's entire career is now in ruins because there's an evolving consensus of historians that Kennedy did indeed have a plan to get out of Vietnam, and that this was detailed. It was, an active plan, and it was going to lead to the winding down of the war in 1964 after the election, and then into 1965. So it means that Noam Chomsky, Gnome as I call him, his entire career is built on a tissue of lies. But that entire crew, right, the left libs, the Amy Goodmans, the Jeremy Scahill, where they're trying to build up new ones, right? Yeah. In the form of Scahill.
That's right.
So these scoundrels, I would say, are being offered as possible revolutionary leaders. And the point is, we got to make sure that they don't hegemonize this upsurge that's coming. In other words, what people are going to be needing is a program based, I would say, around the Wall Street sales tax. In other words, hit Wall Street, tax Wall Street, make them pay for the social safety net, and then nationalize the Fed, seize control of the Fed, and use the credit-creating power to create something like 30 million jobs at union pay scales and rebuild the infrastructure.
We're out of time, but I want you to give me 30 seconds on the Tarpley tax and any serious proponents of it in Congress.
It's a worldwide tendency. It is a reality in the European Union. Italy instituted it already in March of this year. It's on the march in France and in Germany. I'm just not exactly sure when it kicks in. Representative Conyers, gallant, dean of the Black Caucus, has a jobs bill which is precisely financed by a small but effective transaction tax, Tobin tax, or some of them even call it Robin Hood tax. This is a very bad name, but a Wall Street sales tax.
1%, like they can't survive. 1%, like they can't survive that. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying 7, 8, 9, 10% on your purchases, including food in some states. Yep. Virginia. So it's clear, right? They have to pay. 1% is really a concession to them, right? A lot of people would say, let them pay 8% or 10% the way I do.
That's right.
There's a lot to be said for that.
They should embrace it. Thank you, Webster. We got to run this time. Keep up the good work.
Talk to you in the new year. Bye-bye.
Indeed. Merry Christmas to you.